Here we go. All right, a little bit about our special guests. All right, first of all, I'm just going to mention the company Waters. It's not necessarily a company that is a commercial product on everybody's lips, but it is a very well-known company in scientific circles, and particularly science for medical. They deliver these instruments, for instance, liquid chromatography. Those are used, it's a method for separating what elements are in things. So you can imagine the medical applications. Mass spectrometry is used also to figure out what every element has its own spectrum when you reflect light into it, so you can start to figure out what's in that. So very precise instrumentation used in labs across the world. They're in, what was it, 130 countries or something like that, Adrian? You can
There are a lot of countries indeed.
Yeah, all right, very good.
Let's say we are expanded across all regions of the globe.
Yes, there you go. And I'm gonna just mention Adrian, if you can introduce yourself. He's a principal localization architect at Waters. He probably has the most hands-on experience getting our software all over with various teams. So he'll be able to answer questions about how that comes along. And then his cohort, Christina, is probably not going to answer too much there, but she's there to support and add anything extra that she possibly can. So Adrian, do you want to say anything else about your work at Waters?
Of course. First, thank you for having me, and great introduction to Waters. You got pinpoint there. So hi everyone, I'm Adrian. I reached recently the 10th year milestone working in localization, out of which the last 6 working for Waters. Part being a project manager, I also support all of the tooling that we use and make sure that they are fully updated and any possible defects get addressed accordingly. Additional to that, providing training to whoever would have to use our tooling and to get around our systems that we use for localization. Apart from that, I'm a dad, having 3 years old. I like fishing, but I didn't get too much in the last period of my life to get to that. But let's wrap it here, and we'll sum up at a later point.
Very good. Christina, do you want to say a brief thing about yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us, Adam, here. I'm Christina. I'm Adrian's colleague. I joined Waters 3 years ago, but I've been in the localization industry from 2008. So it's been roughly 15 years now. I'm managing localization projects, customer-facing localization, marketing materials, and also UI content with the Lingoport toolsuit. And in short, that would be about me.
Okay, very good. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Adam Asnes. I'm the CEO of Lingoport, founder. And I guess I should say I'm in the industry since 1998. So long time, I guess. All right, there we go. All right, so Adrian, I wonder if you can let's start out with like where you are now. Can you describe, your automation process for both internationalization and localization?
Of course, I can tell you that at this point we consider ourselves to be in a pretty good status in what regards our software localization process. Just to give some insights about our products, we have our legacy products, which we will be addressing at a later point in the presentation, but they go on a different process, and we have our more modern and new applications, which are Angular based, for which we chose Lingoport to serve as our automation companion here. And I want to give you an overview in the sense that we have Lingoport in the center of the architecture, communicating with our code repositories and our translation management system. So Lingoport, actually localizer to be more specific, communicates with our Bitbucket or GitHub repositories to get the files to prepare the kit for translation, which goes automatically to the translation management system where it's being addressed by the translation vendor. And once the translation is available, Localizer will pick up automatically the package from an SFTP server and do an automatic commit on the branch of our choosing. That would be the quick description of how the system works.
That's very good. And for I18n?
Well, one of the reasons for which we chose the tools suite from Lingoport was that it gave us the possibility to understand the technical depth lying around internationalization, because for our legacy products, it was quite difficult to get a solid understanding on the overall quality of the code from this perspective. So having globalizer onboarding for all of our projects now gives a quite accurate summary of what is to be expected and the level of effort the development team needs to invest for the overall localization process to work flawlessly.
Oh, very good. All right, thank you for that. I should mention that both Adrian and Christina are in Romania, in Brașov, which is a city somewhat outside of Bucharest. So it's cool. It's we're encroaching on their dinner time, so I appreciate that you made a little extra time. All right, so one of the issues that comes across in a lot of companies is when you try to place localization in terms of the developer acceptance, and there's various experiences that localization teams have working with developers, some really good, some not so good. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that experience of working with development teams.
I'm gonna have to go to a little bit behind of time, like 4 years ago, when we initially found the Lingoport and decided to do a proof of concept around the tooling, because it will give the context to my next statements. So once we went through the POC, we had the need to get support from some of our development teams, and while going through the POC, we were able to capture relevant information that was further used to promote these new tools. At the beginning, though, the development teams were quite reluctant about the tools, and the adoption rate was really low. But luckily, we had a moment where a major project release required localization. So we were able to gather high-level stakeholders that would commit on behalf on our side that this is the way to go, and encourage the development teams to adopt the tooling.
Very good. All right. Do you feel like there's more localized releases happening more frequently?
Definitely. Currently, our major, let's call them programs, get in about 2 releases every year. And we have smaller applications which get released from 2 months to 6 months. But next year, we will be going with the cloud applications, and those will run on a monthly basis in what regards the release cadence.
Very good. All right, good. All right. How many software teams are you supporting now?
Currently, there are 12 development teams actively using the tools. Mm-hmm. And we as project managers along them. And this became like a standard when a new application requires to be localized now.
Okay. And between the different, that's very cool. This is the standard. That's great. What are some of the differences between teams that you've encountered? How are, or some maybe juicy, harder?
Of course. Well, there are some teams which are more familiar around internationalization, and for them it's easier to understand the documentation and to align with these new requirements that the tools bring, not that they are that extensive. But we also have, again, new development teams working on the cloud applications, for example, because this is something which is happening now, that are not that familiar and haven't been exposed to the information. So it's a matter of giving them a presentation, some insights, resources for them to get ready for onboarding. This would be.
All right. All right. And then, we mentioned you're in a lot of countries. How many locales, do you differentiate between locale and language, and how many of each?
We do differentiate, but for our software products, we support the need coming from the market. So at this point, we localize in maximum 3 locales, the UI part. But in what regards the documentation part, we localize in many other languages. We can go up to 16 languages for a given application.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And I mean, just to give some context, being a scientific background, the users of our software are knowledgeable about the science field and don't necessarily require translation for the scientific content that is being shown to them.
Well, going back to locale, for instance, I have, in the case with another medical company that I'm sure would like to remain anonymous. There was one case that this is what got them to buy Globalizer, where they had a bug in their software, and the locale representation of a unit of measurement, which I won't even name what it is because I don't want it to be tracked back to the company, but the unit of measurement, which was like for a nuclear scalpel that uses radiation to kill a tumor, the unit of measurement was represented differently in different markets, and because there was this bug, they fell out of locale, and it was the wrong sort of placement of where the numerical separator was, and the unit was different in this other country, and it had really catastrophic medical impact for them. So that's why I kind of mentioned locales, given that you're in a scientific space, is the locale is more than language, obviously. Do you separate it out that way?
Yes and no, in the sense that we invest a significant amount of time on the evaluation of our products, both on the functional and on the linguistic way. We have, including our subsidiaries from different markets, reviewed the software prior to it being released to ensure that it's according to what the market expects.
Right. Good. Okay. What was it like before you had systems set up?
Well, before is still now, as I told you about our legacy products, where we are dealing with binary localization. So it's completely different software being used to decompile those. And that implied, and still implies, of course, manual harvesting of resources, along with the full workflow, manual workflow with the communication with the vendor, the translation part, the review side, and the packages being committed back in the repository by me and Christina, for example.
Gotcha. I
In
should
this
talk to you
scenario.
afterwards. We do have some binary product solutions. It's not as granular as you get with like a resource file or a database dump, but there are things you can do in terms of recognizing changes in the binary. But yeah, binary is an older way of doing things for sure. Yeah.
You're right, that's correct. We can always go into discussing this, of course.
Yeah, you bet. All right, so let's say there's a new team that you're going to work with. How do you sort of approach them? And there's always the question of security. I mean, you can read what's on my slide. Is there anything that you could talk about that experience of bringing a new team on?
Well, I would go first about security, and I want to confirm that we don't have security concerns because we had IT part of the proof of concept and the Lingoport onboarding process, and to minimize the amount of security issues that we may encounter, we decided to host the Lingoport tool suite on an internal server within Water's premises, and the server is constantly updated and regularly backed up. So from this perspective, I would say the risk is minimal. In what regards the adoption of the tool set for the new teams, we don't necessarily get concerns or resistance lately, but we do need to invest time to make them aware of the steps required for a successful onboarding and usage of the tools.
You know what, one of the things that we see in organizations is that, let's say, it's that cloud application, resource or strings are being put into, say, a JSON file or resx and you don't have as confined a format as you might have with like a Java properties file. So you can get almost anything. Do you run into much of that?
Very good question here. And I can tell you that our software development process is quite strict, and it has been made in such a way that it's consistent across development teams. And apart JSON and resx type of files, we don't use any other files for projects where we use Lingoport. So nothing new or unexpected to look at from this regard.
You're very
Lucky us,
fortunate
right?
to listen to you. You're very fortunate that I can tell you in a lot of organizations, we end up helping them with transforms and the like, so that the format of the file goes to in such a way that the translators can work with it with whatever tools they're using or whatever TMS they're using. So
from this perspective, I do have a comment, because when we initially onboarded our first project, we were transforming the JSON files into properties files. But after a few runs, we saw that the file structure, when the transform back to JSON happened, was not mimicking the English, and it was quite difficult to map the English strings with the localized strings. So after doing some more research on how our translation management system parser worked for JSON, we decided to give it another try for the JSON files. And with the minimal amount of customization, we were able to confirm that JSON is the way to go. And we now don't have any issues with the file structures coming from Lingoport.
Very good. And you're using, I think you're using World Server right now,
yes,
right?
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. All right. So, we've talked a little bit about that. Anything you can add about, sort of challenges or difficulties?
I can give you some examples, in the sense that our repositories are well gated, and they do have rules and restrictions applied to every commit that's coming in. Like having a specific commit message, or a Jira ticket which is in progress and in not another type of status for a Jira ticket, or for example, branches where we commit the localization tickets being closed by mistake or by being unaware of the impact. So it's a little bit of troubleshooting there, but it's an easy resolution from this perspective.
Okay, very good. All right, what's the feedback that you've had from teams?
Well, so far is positive, and especially from the technical leads and the POs, in the sense that they do like the fact that they can understand the technical depth with Globalizer, and they can plan the work accordingly. The fact that the process is fully automated, they get visibility on when a package goes out and when a package returns, and they do add to the security of their gateway process for a specific branch.
Right. I'm going to just mention that for a developer, they don't even necessarily even know that there is a TMS. What's the truth of the status is what's in the repository for a developer. So it's very interesting. And by the way, Adrian is using terminology like branches, repositories. There's a past webinar I did. I don't recall the title of it, but if you want a primer on these kinds of agile terms and how they impact localization, I gave a presentation like that, and just send me a chat or an email or respond to any one of the marketing emails, and I can dig that out for you. All right, let's look into the future. All right. Adrian and I had a little talk about AI yesterday. We can recount, but you know, are you concerned about flexibility right now to changes like, I don't know, a change in a TMS or you know, adoption of AI for translation or anything like that?
Yeah, fair question. But I have to tell you that our localization system is quite complex, in the sense that it's not just out-of-the-box solutions. We also have customizations around connectors and parsing of different file types. So you can imagine that a change in any of the tools will be quite impactful. We do look into the future. Of course, we have to stay aligned with the market trends, but a change of this size would be a significant effort from our side, and would have to be planned accordingly in what regards the risks and the timeline. In what regards the AI, I can confirm that we did some analysis of an AI product. We saw the results, and at the moment we don't consider this new approach as being mature enough for the localization process, but I'm sure the advancement in this regard will be huge, and by next year we will be having a completely different discussion.
Right. Yes, it is changing fast. The most recent announcement on ChatGPT 4 Turbo really kind of makes it a little bit more interesting to test again. We've been doing our own tests with it, but not just for translation, for other things as well. Anyway, that's another subject. That's a whole webinar. All right. Invariably, when you work with developers, because developers like to build things, they like to, you know, sort of build their own DIY or do-it-yourself initiatives. What have you kind of seen there as results to localization and how to go?
Well, I can give you an example, a historical example of our early days with Lingoport, where we had there were two technical leads that checked the Globalizer tool, and so it's SonarQube based, and they simply had the impression they could build such a tool in-house for us to benefit. But after doing a little bit more investigation and putting the effort and the knowledge that they need to build such a tool, they dropped the idea. So from this perspective and around the Lingoport tools, we haven't had any initiatives. Maybe a good one, which is a best practice at the end of the day. Some of the teams chose to do steps in Jenkins. So the adding to the automation process and making the process more secure and hands-off.
Got it. Got it. Yep. Okay. I think this is our last slide, and then we go to questions. So if you've got questions, start getting them ready. How would you describe your return on investment to management?
From this perspective, while we do use KPIs, and this was the first year where we actually jumped in using Lingoport tools with so many teams, I can't actually put a return on investment to it, but we can see results from the perspective that the localization project manager needs to spend less time on harvesting resources and the communication with vendors, and just focus on the quality of the deliverable and communication with the development teams for the effort to be recognized. So on our side, we definitely gained a lot of time that we can spend on other localization initiatives that are ongoing in our organization. And of course, they never stop and just get added. So from this perspective, and with direct impact on our side, the benefit is significant.
All right, very good. Christina, you've gotten off easy. How about I pick on you a little bit? Do you have anything to add about, sort of results that you've seen? Just in localization in general, that we've really kind of focused on tooling, but sometimes localization is really held to like an ROI metric, or in various markets.
Yeah, well, I do not have anything to add. And related to the Lingoport toolsuit, basically the hard work was done by Adrian. By the time then when I started to work with the UI projects, at least the teams that I've been working with this year, they already heard about the toolsuit. They knew something. So even if we had to like refresh their memories and do some training at the beginning, I did not have too much work to do in this regard. And definitely with the automation processes, I see the time gained compared to like binary localizations or other type of projects.
All right, very good, very good. All right, well, let me go to the questions screen. We have our first question in. It's a really good one. How do you solve merge conflicts automatically? Thanks.
I'm afraid I don't have an answer to that. We do cherry picking when is the case, but apart from that, or maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. Let me give you an example, and please follow up with a question if I am off what you expect to hear. I'm giving you an example where we had a project going on the development branch, and when they got ready for release, they swapped to a release branch. We were using, of course, the same project in the translation management system, which was picking content from the same translation memory. And based on some subsidiary feedback, we updated some translation for the development branch, but the release branch was picking those changes while it shouldn't have. And the resolution in this scenario was to actually a solution from Lingoport at the end of the day, because we were working with full files being sent for translation, and we left it full files for the development branch. And for the release branch, we chose to go with the delta only. So it was only picking on the modified and new strings without any other strings being leveraged wrongfully. That would create a conflict. Does this reply to your question?
All right. Any other questions? Boy, if there's a technical crew here, this is actually a good chance to ask. I mean, related to that, there's also the synchronization of languages. You know, the French comes back before the German and all that.
Yeah, fair point. From this perspective, again, the versioning of the prep kits being sent is being handled behind the scenes by Lingoport, and from this perspective, we never had an issue. But on the other hand, we are doing weekly UI localization for the applications, which ensures that no language gets left behind that would create a possible conflict at the time of merging.
Got it. Okay. We do have a follow-on question. That's based on your explanation of your tool configuration, is there anything you would like to improve on?
Yes, and we've done a feature improvement to Lingoport, and as far as I know, it's on their roadmap, and hopefully we'll be seeing this starting next year. And to get into a bit of detail here, and it's a particular need of us. I'm not sure how other of your clients are working, but as I was mentioning earlier, with the Delta only for the files being sent for translation, or with the full files being sent for translation, we more recently realized the need of sending all of the files which are in scope for translation, just to ensure term consistency when a specific term changes, and we don't have access to other files that may have not been modified for a request of newly translated content.
All right. I'm sure you had that conversation with Olivier on our team. So
I did, as I said, I know it's on the roadmap. It's not that urgent, but it's something that we need, and hopefully we'll be seeing soon.
Okay, well, you'll see a lot next quarter from us regarding string management. It's quite a big R&D effort going on right now, and but I can't talk more about that. All right. Any other questions? Going once, twice. Let's see, how are we doing on time? We're just a little bit over. All right, everyone will get a recording link automatically. There's nothing you need to do. And I want to thank you again, Adrian and Christina, for joining us. And
I just want to add that there is a comment in the chat. There is a comment on the chat from Karen. So if you just look at it.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, it's just said that it was funny to hear that you say, I mean, Adam, you said that Waters isn't a well-known brand.
Yes.
Yeah, it says it's giant in the vertical. And Karen, as I understand, used Waters equipment in the past.
Cool. That's cool. Yes, they are a giant in the brand, but they're not. You know what I mean by that is like they're not a company like I don't know, Siemens or something like that that is you know, a household name, or Google or Apple or something like that. But yeah. Appreciate that. All right. And with that, I think we're out of questions. So I'm going to let it go. And we've got in the chat the registration screen for our December webinar. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks to Kate she makes all this stuff happen. And we'll see you next month, I hope. Take care.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.